What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up video to my Everything That's Wrong with Warlords of Draenor, and we're not going to be talking about everything today. We're going to be talking about just one thing. Well, a number of things that all fall into the same category, and that category is professions. Now, I think that a lot of my suggestions and things that I thought was wrong with the game, a lot of them are debatable. Like some people consider they're a good thing, some people consider they're a bad thing. There's just my opinions, but I think that overwhelmingly, a lot of people dislike professions. I know some people do like them, and I think that there have been good things that have been added. I think that the catch-up mechanisms are really good because it's just ridiculous having to go through all the different things, and like, even though I think it's important to level up, at the end of the day, I think it's better to just give them the catch-up boxes or the, I don't know, like little 5-point things. Point being is that a lot of people do not like professions, and whenever I made my video, the Everything That's Wrong with Warlords of Draenor, I said that people should come up with their own solutions. They should come up with their own ideas on what should the professions have in this example, and what should the game have, and like really come out, instead of with complaints, come out with fixes, come out with solutions instead of just identifying problems. Not that identifying problems is bad, really. It's just not going to get you where you want to go. And so today I'm going to talk about what I think needs to happen with professions and the fixes and the different ways that I could see professions being integrated into Warlords of Draenor now, and maybe in 6.1, hopefully, that would really make a lasting and meaningful impact with professions throughout the entire expansion, and not just, because like right now, guys, this is what professions really are. As soon as we finish up High Mall, and as soon as we finish up maybe BRF, and we go into the next tier, professions are going to be one of those things that they pretty much were in Mists of Pandaria, where you would do professions, and they would pretty much gear you up to do Raid Finder, and that's pretty much it. Professions didn't really have a lasting impact with you. They didn't stay with you throughout the entire expansion. And the only time that they really did with Mists of Pandaria was with the different gems, of course, with enchants, of course, and all those things that you apply to all different items, and also with the different profession-specific bonuses. So like the engineering glove enchants, the extra sockets with blacksmithing, etc. And so besides that, professions, pretty much, you kind of outgrew professions after you outgrew heroics, honestly, and so they just kind of became obsolete. Now, in my opinion, guys, the golden age of professions was in vanilla Warcraft, before Burning Crusade, before any of that stuff. And the reason for that is that professions had a lasting impact on your character throughout the entire game. And whenever you were first leveling up, you could make gear. The green scale plate or something like that, I don't remember quite the name, but it was a chest piece for warriors. It was like level 31, and man, if you did not have this chest piece on by the time you were level 35, you were just behind. Okay, like that's it. You just sucked. Okay, it's like not having legendary cloak in Mists of Pandaria at the end of it. Like that was the chest piece to have, and there were other items that were very similar. Another example of this is that a lot of these profession items, whenever you got a level 60, were required for the certain raids because you needed them to actually get into the different raids and actually even have a chance at defeating the bosses, because resistances were a factor. If you guys don't know what that is, so a lot of fights would have like fire resistance, and so you'd have to craft a bunch of gear that would have fire resistance on it. And so that was a way to kind of gate people through progression, and also at the same time make the professions viable and useful throughout the entire game, which I thought was very important. But outside of that, another example of this is the Lionheart Helm. The Lionheart Helm is a level 60 plate helmet. It was the only yellow helmet that I'm aware of that was level 60. And the helmet had, before all the stat conversion, it gave you 2% critical strike chance. And like 2% critical strike chance, that's a lot. Okay, I mean, like, just to let you guys know, that was a lot. Like, there were not really any other helms that had that. It didn't have stamina on it either, I don't believe. And so all the stat budget was based entirely around, I think it was like hit rating, critical strike rating, and strength. And so this helmet was good all the way until like the end of AQ40 into Naxxramas. And so you could make this as soon as, and it was actually level 58 requirement, but a lot of stuff was like that back then. But the point here is that that helmet was able to take you, that took you through the entire game. And so if you were able to, and like that helmet was not easy to make. Like you had to have like 15, 20 different items to make this one helmet, and it was really, really hard to make. But whenever you made it, whenever you finally made this helmet, that was it. That was it. There's no need for another helmet because you've got it. And so that's one thing I really liked about it and about the professions in vanilla. Another thing is obviously you had to have professions to create things like sulfurous. You had to create the sulfuron hammer. And so blacksmiths had to make this because if they didn't make the sulfuron hammer, then how are you going to get sulfurous hand of Ragnaros, which is a legendary item? And so a lot of these things corresponded into like different legendary things, and professions were a lot more of an integral part of the game. Now, in my opinion, I think that all of the professions should somehow be integral into creating your character and having your character be at its top performance possible in a raiding or a PvP environment. Now, I'm going to go through each profession, and I'm going to tell you guys the changes that I think should be made and what I think could happen with each profession to make it more rewarding. Now, I'm not really going to talk a whole lot about the gathering professions, and the reason for that is I think that they serve a very good purpose with kind of augmenting the, I guess, like the main professions. So, like, mining augments and, supports blacksmithing. Skinning supports leatherworking. Herbalism supports inscription and like tailoring and enchanting, or it used to. Now it pretty much just supports inscription. But you guys get the point. Oh, and alchemy as well. And so anyway, I'm going to kind of go through each one of them, and I'm going to give you guys at least some of my ideas about what should be fixed, and what could change. And these are just things that I think are really good ideas. If you guys disagree, you guys don't think they'll work, let me know why, and come up with your own ideas, because I think that, together, we can come up with some pretty good things. Now, the first thing, guys, is that I think that for blacksmithing, this is going to be the first one we're talking about. And we're going to be talking about blacksmithing for a little bit because it's my favorite profession. Okay, that's mainly why. So the main thing that I think blacksmithing should have that, really kind of relates into different items is it should be able to warforge items. And so what I mean by that is that right now in raids, you're able to go in there and there's a possibility of getting a warforged item, but there's no real way to make it happen. There's no real way to increase your chances of getting a warforged item. It's a crapshoot. You either get it or you don't get it. Usually you don't get it. And so I think that's really frustrating. And so if raids were able to drop some sort of item that blacksmiths were able to use, maybe some sort of cache that blacksmiths could loot, and it would have different items to where blacksmiths could use those and warforge items. And I don't really know if this would be all items, but maybe just plate items. It depends, and leave the other ones for maybe tailoring and leatherworking, but something similar. Another thing that I think that they should add back, actually, is sharpening stones. So you guys might not know what really those are because those left the game in Burning Crusade, and I think they should come back. And the reason for that is that they're just another thing that people can use to augment their character and make their character better for raiding. Now, what sharpening stones pretty much were is that they were like little things that you could enchant your weapon with, temporary enchants to make your weapon basically do more damage in one way or another. And so imbue your weapon with like fire damage or something like that. And another thing that they used to be able to give is blacksmiths they used to be able to enchant shields that would, whenever you blocked with your shield, you would be able to do damage back to your target whenever you block damage. So like you block a target and like you reflect like 20 damage back to them. And so back then, whenever that was like an actual thing that was current, 20 damage was actually kind of a lot. And so I think that's something that should come back. Again, just to make blacksmithing something that's integral to the raiding atmosphere, and to make it to where blacksmithing is a profession that's actually integral to your character and takes your character throughout the entire game. And so that's one thing I really like to see. Another thing is that I do think that they should add some sort of like bonus armor enchant for blacksmithing, like dark iron plating, or I guess since we're in Draenor, like Draenic armor plating or iron horde plating, something like that. And also, this is something that I want to do. I want to see with all three of the like main, I'd say, like professions, which would be probably, or like at least like gear related professions, which are tailoring, blacksmithing, and leatherworking, is that you're able to specialize your blacksmithing. You were able to do this in Burning Crusade, where you could either specialize into making weapons or making armor. And then whenever you specialize into making weapons, you could make special axes, special maces, or special swords. And so all of these things were really flavorful things, and so you could really spend a lot of time making the sword, and by the time you actually made this sword and it was up to the highest level, it was on par with like SSC or TK gear, and so that actually took you really far in the game. And so that's something that I'd really like to see. And with this, I'd really like to see some sort of specialization that came for each class. And so like example would be like if you're a Death Knight, you could have like some sort of like Death Knight specialization where you can make. And also, I think that transmog items should become sort of a meta game within professions. And so, as a blacksmith, you'd be able to make, as a Death Knight blacksmith, you'd be able to make like some sort of rune plate armor or something like that. It doesn't have to be like amazingly fancy, but it would have to be pretty cool. Maybe like I think that there are some Death Knight armor sets that aren't really in the game, but certain NPCs have them. So maybe just use one of those, something like that. I think that that would be really cool. And so as a Death Knight, you know, you go to Evanhold, you get a quest, you go to Naxxramas, kill some sort of a guy in an instance, same thing. With a warrior, maybe you could have to go to, I don't know, like, this would be good. If you had to go into BRD, and then if you guys don't remember, like whenever you had to get attuned to Molten Core, you had to jump down where Incendius was, the little fire elemental, and do a lava run over to where the Molten Core entrance is. And if you had to solo that as a warrior when everything was scaled up, I think that that would be pretty interesting. And so, you know, obviously the rewards here would be you get certain different types of items that would maybe gain you, I don't know, like a weapon that would give you like 5 rage every single time you hit or something like that. Just something more interesting than just plain stats. And so I think that'd be really cool. Paladins, I don't know, you do something with the Holy Light and you fight with some other paladin to kill like a Death Knight. Okay, I don't really know specifically, but I think that's something that would definitely be really nice to have. Now, for Inscription, I think one thing that Inscription could have is they could have the ability to add tertiary stats to items in the same way that blacksmiths would hypothetically be able to add Warforge properties or Warforge an item with higher level properties to an item. And so Inscriptionists right now, they don't really have a whole lot that they can do. They make glyphs and you use glyphs once, and so there's not really a whole lot to it. Also, Inscriptionists used to have like a couple of different items, and they still do have them, but it hasn't really been continued, that you pretty much only would really use for transmog. Now, one example of this is Key to the Plains, and that is level 81 staff, and it looks like a key. If you ever played Kingdom Hearts, it looks just like that. And there's another one called the, what is it? I think I wrote it down here somewhere. Ghost Iron Staff. There it is. And it's really, really cool. Unique model. Pretty much useless. Pretty much useless in terms of actual usability. But it does look really, really cool. And so both of these things are transmog items that Inscriptionists can make and sell on the auction house. And it makes the profession kind of useful because you can at least make this thing, put all the materials together, and actually make it, and then you can get some money for it. And so one of the main things that I would say is that one thing that I don't really like about Warlords of Draenor is that they took away a lot of the investment in gear. And I think that that's something that I really enjoy doing. You know, by the time that I actually finish fully upgrading my gear, you know, buying this expensive meta gem for it, buying other gems for it, buying an enchant for it, you know, all this other stuff. You know, I felt really invested in this item, and in turn invested in the character, and in turn invested in the game, which is something that is pretty important in my opinion. So either way, I do think Inscription should be able to add tertiary stats. So those are like avoidance, life leech. What are the other ones? There's a bunch of other different tertiary stats that items can roll with, but they don't always get, and so they can be kind of useful or not. Now, Jewelcrafting is kind of like an obvious one. I think Jewelcrafting should be able to add sockets on items. And so since items don't really have sockets on them anymore, like passively, except they can sometimes roll a socket, I do think Jewelcrafting should be able to add at least one socket or at least up to two sockets on an item, depending on if it was it already came with a socket or not. And so again, to kind of remove some of the RNG away from raiding, and also at the same time give players a you know, I guess a clean path into having the best character possible, even if it takes a lot of work. And I think that that's what should really separate, you know, between 90% and 100% should be actually 90% of the work, and 10% of the work should just be getting all the way to 90%. And like Blizzard, I'm going to kind of talk about this for a second here. Blizzard has pulled a lot of ideas from Diablo and put them into Warcraft. And it's a shame to me that a lot of the ideas that they pulled into Warcraft are not the ideas that I really enjoyed about Diablo. And some of the things that I really enjoyed about Diablo is that you could make crafting items that were really good. Like some of the crafting yellow items in Diablo, you use those all the way up until you got like a really nice legendary and just tons of really great stuff that has to do with Diablo. Really unique items with unique abilities, and just I'd really like to see that come into Warcraft. I know that obviously there's a lot of you know, balance concerns with that, but it really made Diablo fun to play. Like I really, really love playing Diablo, or I used to. I don't really play it too much anymore because there's not really that social aspect that I like in Warcraft. Diablo doesn't really have that, but either way, the character creation and optimization was extremely fun. It was much more entertaining, just a lot better, just straight up, it was a lot better than Warcraft. And it still is. If you play Diablo, I think that you can kind of agree with me on that. If you don't, that's fine. But I do think that the Diablo customization is absolutely like so far superior to the Warcraft customization. It's unbelievable. And so yeah, jewel crafting, I think that jewel crafting, if they could add gems to items, that would make, of course, jewel crafting useful for the entire expansion, no matter whoever you are. And it would also create different other, I guess, like little things. And I also think that jewel crafting could maybe reforge necks or rings, or maybe have some sort of role in the legendary ring quest. Because, again, I think that all these things should all tie together to create one cohesive, one cohesive character, one cohesive game, etc. And so if the jewel crafting, I guess, like profession had something to do with like reforging rings, or maybe reforging the legendary ring if you get a certain item from Imperator or something like that, I mean, that would be pretty cool. And so like, because the legendary ring crit multi-strike is not very good for ret paladins, and so maybe if you were a ret paladin, you could get that item and somehow get like haste mastery or something like that. And so I think that would be really, really great. Now, enchanters, I think that enchanters should just like be in general the reforgers. I think reforging should be added back into the game, and the reason for that is that the reason reforging sucked is because it didn't really. People just used it to math out everything, and it just like became kind of unfun. But reforging also allowed for a lot of different customizations and different things like that for each fight. And so for some fights, for example, for a warrior, mastery is really good, and for other fights, parry and dodge were, depending on what kind of fight they were or how you want to gear your character. And so either way, you could reforge back and forth. And the same thing is it's like kind of versatility kind of is like the replacement for reforging, but it really doesn't do much because versatility is like the worst stat for every single class, or it's like tied with another stat for being the worst stat, and that's a best case scenario. And so I think enchanters should have some sort of ability to reforge items, maybe with using, again, like some sort of crafting material that you could get from raids or something like that. And also I think that enchanters should be able to get some sort of way to add unique glows onto items that you can't really get through the, what's it called? The enchanting, what is it? The little building that you have. Because like if you guys don't know, you can kind of like give illusions to your weapons, so it looks like it has one enchant, but it doesn't. And so like that's kind of one thing that I think that enchanters could just have that, and they could add like these special enchants that you'd have to get from an enchanter specifically to make them viable, and also maybe a couple of other little things like just again enchanting all the different items again. I think that that's one of the worst things. Again, I think I said this before with Warlords of Draenor, is that they don't have a lot of gear customization, or at least like gear investment. And so like I think that they should add back the chest enchants, add back the glove enchants, the boot enchants, everything. I think all that stuff should be added back and more, because it just makes the game more interesting, in my opinion. And for engineers are like, I love engineering. Engineering is probably my second favorite profession behind blacksmithing, and it's probably the most fun profession in the game. And so I think for engineers, one thing that they should be able to do is kind of imply, like, I guess, like the different tinkers to other players' items. And so, like the shielding belt and stuff like that. Like, if you don't know what engineers have, on different belts, like you can have a frag belt, and so you throw a bomb off of your belt, and it stuns and interrupts things. Very useful for challenge modes. And other thing is you can have a shield on your belt, and so like the shield gives you like 20% of your health as a shield, and you can use it like every 3 minutes. And so all these different things. And so if engineers could apply these to other players' armor and like belts and boots and stuff and cloak, I think that would be pretty fun. And it would also kind of add, like some kind of reason to be an engineer other than, well, there really isn't one except for like a couple of like very small items. And other things that I think you should add. Oh, one thing, guys, a robot chicken mount. Okay, that's it. That's the main one. Okay, that's out of all the engineering things, robot chicken mount should definitely be the main one. Another thing is I think they should have some sort of like you guys know how the in items, like the Aviana's feather, for example, has like some kind of ridiculous cool use, and there's all kinds of other ways to use it. And so if engineering had different items like that they could craft and trade to players, or maybe that were engineering only that didn't really affect gameplay too much, but they were just really cool, I think that would kind of make the profession a lot more interesting. Now for alchemy, I think alchemy should be able to make the augment runes. Now the augment runes are, if you guys don't know what those are, they're kind of like another type of flask that you can have, or it's like an elixir actually. It's basically an elixir that you have, and they're hard to get. You get them through like the LFR bags and a couple of other ways, but there's no real way to craft or create these that I'm aware of. And so if alchemy was able to create these augment runes, I think that would make alchemy actually useful. And also, I think alchemy could maybe create the caster equivalent of the sharpening stones, as I was talking about with blacksmithing, that you can kind of apply to your weapons. It's like back in the day, warlocks used to have like a spell stone or a fire stone, and like the spell stone made you do more spell power damage, and the fire stone made you do more fire power damage, and each one had like different components of things that they would do. Well, if they would add that back and just kind of give that to alchemists where they could trade it and give it to other players in general, I think that again that would create more synergy between the different professions and the players, and also at the same time give alchemists one more thing that they can do to make money and make the profession useful. Now tailoring is like one of those things, as I said before, it's like in Diablo. This is another example. Is it in Diablo? Even if you have a legendary item like Andariel's Visage or something like that, like Shard of Hate or something, and you're able to dye it or turn it to a different color. And I think that that's something that Warcraft should be able to give tailors to do, to where tailors can create armor dyes. And so maybe this would be kind of like a lot to do, but I know that a lot of people really love to do transmog, and it's something that they just enjoy doing. And if you were able to dye the colors of your gear, that would allow people to make all kinds of amazing different combinations. Like I could have like a black tier 5 set. I mean, like not just like the merciless set, but actually like just solid black. You know, something just absolutely badass, like a red dreadnought set. Oh, that would be amazing. And so if they could add some sort of dyes that you could apply to your armor and just all kinds of stuff like that, oh, that would be so cool. Like I would really enjoy that. And so that's like the main thing that I think tailoring should have. And another thing is that maybe unique cloak transmogs. And again, as I said before, like with the dyes, is that people really like looking cool. Like that's something that they actually really like to do. And like I see people like every time, like I see somebody, they have a special transmog on. And so people put a lot of work into this. Some people do. Some people really don't care. Like my mom, she doesn't even have a transmog. And I think she does because it's one that I got her because I thought their character looked really dumb. I didn't even want to see her looking like that. So either way, there's not really a whole lot that tailoring can really do right now, aside from just make the crafting items, which, again, that's a crapshoot. And so besides that, there's not really much they can do. And again, I think they should add like the spellweave cloth and all that stuff back, or spellweave embroidery, and you know, the enchants for casters for their leggings. And back in Burning Crusade, what I said about blacksmithing with creating the different like specializations, like a warrior specialization, death knight specialization, I think you should add that with tailoring. Now back in Burning Crusade, they had this. They had like the Frostfire and Shadow Frost specialization, I think, it's something like that. And so either way, you're able to pick between one of 3 Mooncloth. I think it was the 3rd one. And you're supposed to pick between one of 3 different specializations. And so it was kind of like an unspoken expectation that, like, if you were a Frost Mage or an Affliction Warlock, you went with the Shadow one. If you were a Fire Mage or a Destro Warlock, you went with the Fire one. And if you were a Healer, or I think like maybe like a Shadow Priest, no, obviously Shadow Priest would go with the Shadow one. But if you were a Healer, you went with the Mooncloth one. And so I think that they added that back, and then also they kind of gave, you know, again, like a unique set of transmog gear that you could create, you know, that would kind of make your character look cool, or just gear that you could create that looked cool at the same time. That would be pretty fun. And it would also, I guess, like, you know, I really like doing the Warlock Green Fire quest. And I think if they created more of those little in-game events for different classes and different specializations and, you know, for, in this example, professions, it would kind of make things more interesting for everybody. And so just so you can have that little thing that you can go do, you know, I have to go do my mage tailoring quest, and like at the end of it, you can get some, you know, the ability to create some sort of set item, or like, you know, mini set, like a 3-piece set or something like that, like a helm, shoulders, and robe or something like that. And like the 3-piece is actually makes you, I don't know, like I honestly have no idea, but it just basically gives you some sort of a buff. and it would be pretty fun to do. As I said before, it's just one more thing that can kind of make professions last throughout the entire expansion, rather than just outgrowing them after you do heroics, which is pretty much what's going on here. Leatherworking, I think leatherworking should be able to add item upgrades. And I don't really, there's no real reason I think leatherworking specifically, but it's just the other ones I felt had better uses elsewhere. And so leatherworking, I think item upgrades were probably one of the biggest changes and the best changes in Mists of Pandaria. Mists of Pandaria did a lot of really great things, did a lot of shitty things too, but there were a lot of really good things that happened in Mists of Pandaria that it feels like we kind of went back in time, literally, and those things just didn't even happen. And one of those is by far the item upgrades. I loved item upgrades. Again, more investment in in your gear and your character and in the game. And so I think that leatherworkers should be able to, I guess, apply item upgrades to gear. And I'm not really sure how. I mean, like I don't really have everything like written out or specified out, but I think that would be a general idea, and somehow that could be implemented. Also, of course, the bonus armor leg enchants, like I said, with Blacksmith for the leather-based tanks like a monk and a guardian druid. And I also thought that if you could give like a riding crop for your mount that you could apply as like a boot enchant, that like wouldn't replace like a normal boot enchant, that would be cool. Like, because they used to have that in Burning Crusade. You used to have, and then you used to get that thing in like I think it was like Ungoro Crater, the carrot on a stick, and you got this little trinket. And this trinket made your mount go 3% faster. And it didn't matter because like nobody even noticed it, but every single person had it, and they had it on their hotbar, and they would click it every single time they get on their mount so they could go 3% faster. And so if they just had that as a boot enchant, I think that would be pretty fun for people. Obviously, it's not really that big of a deal, but it would just be like one of those cool little things that they could have, which is kind of, you have a whole lot of cool little things. Well, you've got you've got a lot of cool little things. So I think that's kind of, like whenever I remember the vanilla professions, there were just a lot of cool little things, and I'd really like to see some of those come back. And that's kind of why I'm making a video with my own ideas and everything else. And let me think. I think I pretty much went over everything. Yeah, I pretty much went over everything that I wrote down. I didn't really I don't know. I came up with these ideas in like a couple of hours, and so obviously a lot of people can come up with better stuff, and I'd like to hear what you guys would, I guess, like consider to be, I guess, like what would make professions fun for you, what would make them engaging, entertaining, like what would make you want to do professions. And so either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to go straight, like just real talk and what I think should happen, because man, if they made some of these changes like in 6.1 even, that would be the best. Like, I would be so happy. Oh my god. And so hopefully you guys are too, would be too. And if not, tell me what you think, what could change. I read a lot of complaints, but I don't really read a lot of solutions. And so, let's try and come up with some of those ourselves. And I didn't really talk about the gathering professions, as I said before. I do think the gathering profession should have something that's unique to actually looting an item, like actually clicking and like mining an actual mine that requires mining that you're not able to get through the garrison. That's something that I do think they should have as well for the skinning, tailoring, skinning, herbalism, and mining. So either way, guys, I hope you guys enjoy, and that's pretty much all I got. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.